Hey everyone, EO here, coming to you live from nowhere. I decided to do a follow-up of the Buffy review I just did for favorite eps. I think it's actually hit more views than any other review I did. Actually, don't quote me on that, but I think that's the case. The last I looked, it had quite a few. For the time anyway, for as much time's passed since I've done it, it has got quite a few views. So thank you to everyone who's listening. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed. Like I said, share it with your friends. If you like it, post a comment. If you want me to do review something else, I'm more than happy to take it into consideration. So thank you again. But let's move into the reason I'm doing this review, which is Buffy. I had a huge list, as I kind of briefly mentioned in the first part of this review, that I did not think that it would take up that much time just talking about 6 episodes. So I had a list of like 12. So I'll try to get to the others here now. I have to do another shout out to Katie, who called me out on riffing on the episode of The Body. And I like The Body, don't get me wrong. So, yeah, thank you for listening, Katie. Let's move into the first episode of this review, which is the episode Innocence, which is toward the end of season 2. It is the pivotal episode where Angel loses his soul for the first time, and this episode was, it's a stepping stone to a lot of stuff that happens later on in the series in Buffy as well as Angel. It is the first time he loses his soul. It's when we figure out that he's been, the real nature of his curse. And it's a pretty wrenching episode in a sense. The way Angel loses his soul, for those who haven't seen it. So spoiler alert a little here. If you haven't seen Buffy and you want to watch it, maybe not listen to this. Anyway, the motif is perfect happiness, which in our time apparently translates to sex, and sex with Buffy anyway. Angel and her, after fighting said demon and escaping, they end up doing their thing, and Angel wakes up in the middle of the night and runs out into the rain and is in incredible pain and everything, and then that's it, and then it shows him later, that he, how his transformation has become, and then he becomes evil, evil and jealous. The cool thing about this episode is, one thing in particular, the after the sex scene thing. I remember when they filmed this episode, and they aired it and everything. And I don't remember if it was in an interview, or I think it was, but I want to say it was in a news story. And this episode kind of got a little flack because the love scene, it didn't show, which now I guess isn't really as big a deal. I'm not sure on that, but then it didn't show the safe sex, the condom, that kind of thing. And I remember in the article they're reading it was an interview or something, and they were kind of giving him flack for not showing that, and somebody had written that the dude's a 247-year-old vampire. He shoots blanks. So I thought that was pretty funny at that time, and that popped into my head here the other day. So I thought I'd mention it. It's kind of funny. You may be able to find the news story if you look hard enough. Maybe not. I don't know. But it's definitely from a different time, Now you see some of these scenes in certain series that are, I mean, a ton more racy than this one was. And this one, I mean, it was well shot. Whedon talks about, in some of the commentary, talks about being, like, scared almost to shoot this scene because he's never really shot a real good, well, I wouldn't say good, but I don't know if he'd ever shot a real sex scene in a sense like that. But he does talk about being kind of apprehensive and wondering if the actors were going to be apprehensive. But no, I mean, Sarah and David were he said, were just professional, and they weren't worried at all. But yeah, he was. So kind of an interesting backstory there. The second episode I want to talk about is the episode iRobot, YouJane, which is episode 8 from season 1. This is the episode that, I mean, it touches on a big theme now. That's why I said, I don't know if I mentioned in the other interview, that I think I said that the series is actually very still relevant, and it actually still looks really good too. And this is one of those episodes that is very relevant still today, maybe even more relevant than it was at the time. And it deals with Willow talking to this guy named Malcolm, who in fact is the demon Moloch, who's been kind of scanned into a computer. So he's inside the computer, and so he can access anything. Well, she's talking to this guy, and she doesn't know anything about him over the net. So I mean, and she's literally falling for him, and then they want to meet. And ring any bells for today? Yeah, I mean, it's probably more relevant today than it was then. And I mean, then it was very relevant. Like, I mean, that's one thing that Buffy excels at over any other series of this nature, is inputting careful subplot into an episode that, I mean, every episode stands for way more than face value. You know, as much as I like some of these other series, they don't do that well. Or the episode is purely, you know, meant to tell said story, and there's really no undertones. There's really no bigger picture. And in this episode particularly, there's a huge picture about the safety between, like, you don't really know who someone is when you're talking to them until you know who they are and have met them. And it's a very interesting concept. So I like this episode. I mean, there are some parts that are a little dated. I mean, the computer technology is definitely dated in the episode. So that's one thing that, you know, if you're a, you know, younger person in these days, like, go back and watch Buffy, you'll see it. It's interesting, to say the least. So, but I'll move on to the next episode, which is Superstar. And again, I forgot to put a season and episode number on this. It is a later season, if I remember right. I should have covered my bases. I apologize, but I do remember this episode very, very fondly because it was very entertaining. The episode deals with the character of Jonathan, which is played by Danny Strong. Yes, the same Jonathan that I mentioned in the episode 8, Earshot, who's going to kill himself. He talks about, if I remember right in the episode, going to a facility to, you know, kind of get his issues worked out, and meeting a guy there that kind of showed him how to do a spell that would literally cast kind of a glamour over reality, where he was a hero and everything he wanted to be. Like, he's better than everybody. I mean, he's action star, superhero in a sense, and everything. So he's adored by everybody, except for Buffy, who you know, kind of starts to figure it out. And I mean, it's the classic thing that, you know, there can exist no perfect, you know, moment, perfect, you know, good in a sense, without perfect evil. And I mean, it is that concept, because Jonathan representing, I mean, as shady as his dealings are and his spell is, he's kind of that perfect good character, whereas he had to, in order to cast the spell, manifest a demon that is the counterpart to him. And things start to spiral out of control when Buffy starts to confront the demon, and eventually Jonathan makes the right choice, and they go and kill the demon. And when they kill the demon, they break the spell. And this episode's what a lot of people, I'm sure, felt. A lot of people have felt this way, like, you know, they've always wanted to be, you know, looked upon and looked at by everybody, and adored by everybody. And in Jonathan's case, yes, he casts a spell, so he's adored by everybody, but in a sense, it's almost, since he doesn't seem to have any friends until you see him later in the series, where he's got Tom Link's character of Andrew and another character, Warren, who seem to be kind of his friends. But I mean, that's touching on a whole other storyline and a whole other issue. But you really don't see him that he has any friends. He gets picked on. He's very very looked down on. So in a sense, I mean, the spell's cast for everyone, but it's really almost him just trying to at least get one person to see that he needs a friend, which is very cool. It's a good episode, and it's funny too. It's hilarious. It's a kind of a step back. Whedon has written this quote that he goes, make things dark, make things, have terrible things happen, but for the love of God, tell a joke. And that's what he does well in Buffy. That's one thing he mixes really well, is there's the subtle quips. And this episode is very, very, dramatic, but it's funny. And he mixes that perfectly. The next episode I want to talk about is episode 3 of season 2. And any Buffy fan will know what this episode is going to be. School Hard. School Hard is the first appearance of the character of William the Bloody, Spike, played by James Marsters. One of my favorite characters, and a lot of people's favorite character, I think. Whedon has said in interviews that when he first created Spike, it was meant to just be a one episode villain, like the rest of the series. Like, he was going to be a vampire, and then Buffy was going to kill him. And I don't know what actually made him rewrite it. And I may be wrong on the one episode thing. Maybe he had planned to do it a couple episodes and then have Buffy kill him. But I do know that he was never intended to be what he ended up being. This iconic character in a sense in the Buffyverse and the Angelverse. So definitely a cool character. I mean, eventually becoming a good guy, which it's a cool path. Like, I mean, it's not Angel who kind of reverts to a bad and then comes back good. Spike really goes through a lot of changes in this thing, some unwilling and some willing. So, I mean, he's a great character. James Marsters is a great actor anyway. Any actor, I mean, you don't see very many actors who can fake a British accent in a sense that everybody thought it was real when it happened. I mean, I remember when he played that character, like, and people were like, oh my God, James Marsters, so-and-so, he's British. I remember seeing comments and stuff and talking to people like, oh, because he's talked about how he's faked, or how he has faked out people with that accent. Like, when they first thought that had met him or met him at a convention or something, they literally thought that he was British, but it turns out that the accent's completely fake, and he did such a good job on it that he completely, pulled the wool over people's eyes, which is cool. His acting coach, or his dialect coach, whatever you want to call it, I guess, must have, it's amazing. And the character he plays is good too. And Marsters just went on with some moderate success in some other stuff, playing a character in Smallville, and later on some other stuff. And he eventually joins the cast of Angel as well. And he always has some good lines. Like, they always give him great lines, which Whedon just feeds him these good lines, which helps the character all the more. But in this episode, he comes to the school on Parent-Teacher Day and tries to kill Buffy, and it doesn't end too well for him. But I mean, you get to see for the first time. Like, I mean, for the first time, it's a vampire who has killed a Slayer, and not just one Slayer, but 2 Slayers. So you get this, holy shit, like, this guy must be badass. And then you get kind of his loose connection to Angel and stuff, a little bit. You don't get a lot on how much into it they know each other, but there's a really funny line with Xander and Angel when they kind of try to pull a ruse on Spike to see what the hell's going on in the school, and Angel fakes like he's gonna, he's got Xander and he's gonna eat him, and as they're walking into the school, he goes, he asks him after the whole thing has happened. He goes, so if he would have, like, you weren't really gonna bite me, or were you? And he goes, oh no, and he goes, but I had to make him make the first move. And he goes, well, what if he would have bit me? And he goes, well, we would have known my ruse worked. And it's just a funny moment because, it's Angel's sense of humor, which is kind of cool. It comes through. And the last one that I want to cover here, mainly because I am pressed for time right now, so I'll hurry up and get through this, is the episode of Hush, which I was called out by Katie on that I wasn't in my first part. The reason I didn't do Hush on the first part is like it's on every list. Like everybody knows that it's a great episode, which is what I said about Once More with Feeling, which is the musical episode of Buffy. That episode is amazing. I mean, I'm not a big fan of musicals. I mean, I don't mind them, but that episode is amazing. The writing in that episode is hands down some of the best in television ever. The same thing with Hush. And Hush, I remember when this episode came out, I think this was when I was still watching it, because I know I didn't come back and watch this episode. I was still watching it. So, this episode, it takes place when Buffy's in college, so probably fourth season. I want to say fourth season. Yeah, episode 25, I think. Or no, not episode 25. Oh, I'll have to look at it later. If you have a question what episode it is, post it. I'll get to it or look it up on the net. But this is the episode that won an Emmy because it was a silent episode. Not totally silent, granted, but 25 minutes of it is kind of the general consensus is totally silent. And I mean, there are some great parts. Everybody in this is so good at acting like bodily, like physically, like motioning things out. There's some great moments, some funny moments. People trying to communicate without their voices. And the episode centers on these people called the Gentlemen, who steal people's voices and then come and kill them. So yeah, you can't scream for help if you don't have a voice. Kind of brings back the old Harlan Ellison, I have no mouth, but I must scream. So, anyway, this episode is really cool. Also brought on by the creepy look of the Gentlemen. They're these skeletal, like, demon figures who look very humanoid, in a sense, like in the body. And their faces are like these weird-looking, like, hyper stretched smile and everything, and they're dressed in tuxedos, and they come with their little black bag like a doctor. I mean, it's a gruesome episode in a lot of ways. I've got to say this because I really wholeheartedly must let people know I hate the character of Riley. I have always hated the character of Riley. Not to say that I hate Mark Blucas, because he's been good in a lot of things. One specifically he was good in is We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson. He played a good role in that. In this character, I've never liked the character of Riley. I always thought he was kind of a D-bag, and really, just never really cared for him. I think that's actually, from everything I've looked, there are a lot of people that hate that character. There are some people that like him. I don't know why, honestly. You could argue that he gives Buffy a sense of normalcy, but then again, you can't, because he turns out to be this, like, military, sanctioned demon hunter, in a sense, with this team on the college underneath the campus, which, let's face it, anybody who's ever went to college, it doesn't matter where you went to college, you've always expected that. I wonder what these, professors, I wonder if they're part of something bigger, if there's a lab underneath the school, or if there's, secret testing going on, or, the conspiracy theorist in me is coming out here. Anyway, so yes, I hate the character of Riley. In this, though, even I don't mind, and I think he's got a few pretty funny parts in this episode. So, anyway, check out Hush. Great episode. If you have not seen it, it's definitely one of the ones to watch. I mean, it kind of takes a little getting used to, though. I mean, there's like no sound. Like the sound in it is almost sensitized. I guess hypersensitized is a word. In the sense that like their motions make more sound because they're not talking, and there's not a lot of background noise, so it's very creepy and eerie. But that's the last one I want to talk about right now. I do have a few more, but I'll save them, and I'll try to come up with some other ones that are standout episodes, and maybe do a third part if people general consensus is that they're liking these. We'll do another part. Also, look out for the next review I'm going to do is a kind of a retrospective on Conan the Barbarian versus the new Conan. For anybody who knows me, knows I did my master's work on Robert E. Howard, the guy that created the Conan character. And so I have a pretty good knowledge of the author and his works. So and I think it's something that needs to be touched on. The character is definitely a good character, and especially since Arnold signed on to do a third one. So I'll talk about that more at length in the next review. But keep tuning in. If you're liking these, subscribe. Thank you everyone who's listening and who has been, commenting and asking for reviews. My friend Katie, who I just mentioned, the Buffy fan. And then the other Katie who put me through the terrible experience that was Lone Ranger. So we'll hope that if she suggests another one, then that it's a better movie. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.